Okay, so let's get right into it. For generations, the American middle class was seen as the absolute bedrock of the economy. But over the last 50 or so, something really profound has happened. It's kind of started to disappear, leaving us with one of the biggest economic puzzles of our time. So the big question is, what happened? Now, this isn't some story about a sudden collapse. It's more like a slow, steady erosion that has completely reshaped the country. A really key feature of the American economy has been quietly vanishing, right in front of our eyes. And this chart, wow, this really gets to the heart of the issue. Just look at this. The middle class's slice of the total economic pie fell by a staggering 30% between 1970 and 2014. 30%. So what on earth was going on? Well, here's where it gets really strange. After 1970, the US economy as a whole just kept on growing. But for most people, their real wages, what their paychecks could actually buy, went completely flat. It's like the engine kept running faster and faster, but the rewards just weren't being shared anymore. Now, this growing divide, it didn't go unnoticed. Way back in 2004, presidential candidate John Edwards really captured this feeling perfectly. He talked about a nation that was splitting into two different economies, which was a reality that millions of people were already starting to feel in their bones. Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question. Or maybe the trillion-dollar question. If the economy was growing, but regular people's wages were stuck, where did all that new wealth actually end up? Well, here's your answer. The gains from decades of economic growth were funneled overwhelmingly to the very, very top. The share of national income going to the top 1% didn't just rise a little bit. It absolutely soared, creating a level of inequality we haven't seen in generations. But to really understand what's happening in America today, we have to look backwards to a pretty unlikely place. Believe it or not, the best explanation comes from a theory that was originally designed for developing economies way back in the post-war era. And we have this man to thank. W. Arthur Lewis. Back in 1954, he came up with a model of something he called a dual economy. And it was so powerful, so insightful, that it ended up winning him the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1979. His work basically explains how economic growth is often really uneven. It happens in specific pockets, not everywhere all at once. So, what is a dual economy? Well, at its core, it's this idea that a single country can actually have two completely separate economic worlds inside of it. They exist side by side, but they play by different rules, they offer different opportunities, and they create totally different outcomes for the people in them. Now, in Lewis's original model for developing nations, he called these two worlds the capitalist and the subsistence sectors. The capitalist sector was the modern one. It used machinery, it was efficient, and it paid higher wages. The subsistence sector, on the other hand, was mostly farming. It had so much extra labor that adding another worker barely increased output at all. And here's the shocking twist. This exact framework, a model designed for places like post-colonial Asia and Latin America 70 years ago, now gives us an incredibly powerful way to understand the modern United States. So let's just translate the terms for today. What Lewis originally called the capitalist sector, we can now think of as the FTE sector. And his subsistence sector, well, that looks a whole lot like what we can call the low-wage sector. The FTE sector, that stands for finance, technology, and electronics, is pretty much the modern engine of wealth creation. This is where you find highly skilled, usually college-educated workers, and their incomes have been steadily going up. This is the part of the economy that is absolutely thriving. And then you have the low-wage sector. This is a massive group of workers whose wages have been stuck for decades. They're feeling the squeeze from things like globalization and new technology. This is the world of living paycheck to paycheck. And the scale of this divide is it's staggering. That thriving FTE sector, the one we hear so much about, it only makes up about 20% of the population. The other 80%, the vast majority, live and work in the low-wage sector. It's a deeply, deeply uneven split. So you might be wondering, is there a way to get from one side to the other? And the answer is yes. The main bridge from the low wage to the FTE economy is education. But here's the thing, it's not some easy commute. That bridge is narrow, it is really hard to cross, and it is absolutely full of obstacles. For someone from a low-wage family, that path is incredibly risky and uncertain. It means trying to pursue higher education, often against huge odds like underfunded schools. And even if you make it through, a college degree is still no guarantee that you'll land one of those good jobs in the FTE sector. And that's because a college degree on its own often isn't enough. To really thrive in the FTE sector, you need more than just knowledge. Success really depends on having three very distinct types of capital. So first, there's physical capital. That's the traditional stuff, like machines and buildings. Then there's human capital. That's your education, your skills. But the third one, social capital, is just as crucial. This is all about your network, the people you know, the trust and connections that can open doors to real opportunity. It's not just what you know, it's who you know. Now, this economic divide, it doesn't just stay in the world of economics. No, it spills over into politics, and that's where it creates this really critical imbalance. These two sectors might be part of the same country, but they do not hold equal political power, not even close. I mean, just look at the political imbalance here. The FTE sector, with only 20% of the people, has a completely disproportionate amount of political power. And at the same time, the low-wage sector, which represents the vast 80% majority, has far, far less influence. And this imbalance creates a dangerous feedback loop. The FT sector's influence can shape policies on everything, taxes, education, labor, in ways that actually reinforce the very divide that gives them that power in the first place, making it even harder for everyone else to cross over. And this isn't some new idea. W. Arthur Lewis saw this dynamic crystal clear way back in 1954. He actually wrote that the people in the capitalist sector have a direct interest in holding down the productivity of the subsistence workers. It's a pretty chilling insight that feels startlingly relevant today, doesn't it? And all of this leaves us with a final, really profound question. If we are truly living in a dual economy, two separate worlds with different rules and completely different futures, can we really expect our society, our culture, our politics, can we expect any of it to remain unified? That's the challenge this model forces us all to confront.